Hello, everyone, and welcome to International Relations. I'm Mrs. Waler, and today we are going to talk about an introduction to perspectives in international relations. This is Chapter 2, if you're following along in your book, Contending Perspectives on International Politics. And that's my daughter, Molly, saying hello. So today is a very quick overview of realism, liberalism, Marxism, feminism, and constructivism. These are all perspectives you will need to be familiar with. You will have to understand what these theories perceive in the world around them, how they problem solve, how they work together, or how they don't, how they view the world. And when you look at different approaches and scenarios, if you can pick out which ones are which, okay? So to repeat, and let me give you a little list here. There it is. Realism, liberalism, Marxism, feminism, and constructivism. And I do want to make it very, very clear that all of these isms can be used to look at the very same event. One of the first questions I always get is, well, what perspective was, the terrorist attacks on September 11th? But you can take those attacks and you can look at them from all of the different perspectives. And that's what's difficult about international relations, and this chapter in particular, is that you really learn thoroughly how many different perceptions exist in the world when you look at how different countries view things, different leaders within those countries, but also different people and the population within those countries. And when you hear these perspectives, you will even see, I hope, that your family might have a multitude of these perspectives, that people in our country, our different political parties, our systems, there are many different perspectives even within a single country, state, city, school, okay? And of course, a lot of people are really in between depending on the event. So some people may view something from a more realist perspective if it's, say, war, but then they might view something like, hey, let's solve global warming together in a more liberal point of view. So you can have multiple perspectives depending on the different events and situations. Okay, so the first one we're going to start with are the main two. Most people are somewhere within the continuum or spectrum of realism versus liberalism, okay? And this graphic organizer is really beautiful, and I highly recommend that you make one as well. Just go ahead and make a chart, a T-chart with 3 spots. I put shared goals in the middle, the realist perspective over here, and the liberal perspective over here. Okay, so first I'm going to start by repeating our shared goals. Every country in the world, no matter what kind of culture they have, they desire security, human security, protecting of their people, economic security, feeling financially safe, and of course, actual physical security from war and outside threats. So the whole point of international relations is to avoid conflict, manage conflict, to gain power so that you can achieve whatever goals you want as a nation. This is a power competition, and we are stuck in the world, the ring, if you will, with all these different contenders who all want the same thing. So I'm going to start with realism, to go in the same order as the textbook, okay? Realists overall, okay, will have a foreign policy that is dominated by military first. For them, it's all about power, and military power is the strongest power, so that's where you focus your efforts. If you are a realist, you see that war is coming. It's inevitable. It will happen. You can't trust anyone. So your goal as a realist is to be prepared for when war breaks out and to have the largest, strongest military so that no matter what, you're going to win. Your military might will be a deterrent for people attacking you because they know they will lose. Okay? So I love this quote. If you want peace, you must prepare for war. No one is going to poke the bear. If they know they're going to get mauled, they're going to stay far and clear away. So for a realist, having a large military, a dominant military is how you stay safe and peaceful. So it's very much so high spending on weapons, large military size. You create and focus on new technologies. The arms race is always something foremost in your mind. How do I have more nuclear weapons, more tanks, more aircraft carriers, more everything? Your focus on alliances isn't so much for problem solving as military alliances. How many countries around the world will have my back if I get attacked? That's what your focus is as a realist. They love balance of power politics. And what that means is constantly looking and evaluating who has the upper hand and who would win in a fight, and how you get more people to your side to make you stronger. And use of force is not something that you shy away from, because sometimes you're going to have to prove that you're willing to use that force. You're going to have a navy circling the globe all the time. You need to have military bases around the world. You need to test missiles and rockets publicly and often to remind people of how strong you are. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this page, but I'm going to my PowerPoint here to focus a little bit more on realism. Okay, my overview of realism is really thinking about how they view the world. And Thomas Hobbes is the philosopher who says it best. Life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. People are believed to be flawed, and that war is inevitable. I know it's sad to say, but it's this natural belief that people are selfish, they're individualistic, they will always do what's best for them first, and they kind of have to fight that inner selfish evil that they have. And because of that, you can't trust other people, which is why you always have to arm yourself. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. You keep your eyes, but also your weapons on them, okay? Now, this is usually embraced by the more conservative political parties and countries, but I do want you to know that conservatism in international relations isn't the same as conservatism in political parties, okay? So realism is just what we're focusing on now, whereas conservatism as a political party in America is much more, and there's more issues and things like that. So this is the idea that other people are going to attack you at some point, and you need to be ready for it, okay? All right, the second approach is liberalism, okay? Now, liberalism, also known as idealism, would be embraced by the more liberal political parties, and again, they don't have the same exact interests, and it's not the same thing. This is focusing on a theory of foreign relations, okay? And the quote I have here is, "Those who want peace should agree to keep it." And agreement is such the heart and soul of liberalism. Instead of building more weapons, you want to agree to destroy weapons and get rid of them. And in an ideally liberal world, there would be no weapons needed, and that we could trust each other not to go to war. So their goal is more disarmament, whereas a realist goal would be to arm up. Liberals also believe that having limitations and agreements is what best manages and avoids war. So you agree to respect each other's borders. You agree to certain, behaviors and limitations. You create partnerships for security, not military alliances. The way you avoid war is by trading with one another, learning from one another. And liberals have embraced very specifically a kind of government and economy that works best. In their opinion, democracies are more peaceful, and making the world more democratic will make it more peaceful. Same thing with free trade. The free market economy is something they believe everyone can benefit from, and by having that harmony of interest, they won't go to war with each other. I can't go to war with you because I trade with you, and I need you, and you need me, so you won't go to war with me either. So for them, the arms race is kind of silly, and what they should be doing is racing to make more and more connections. It's also promoting cultural exchange, this idea of understanding one another. I can't trust you in realism because I don't know you. And in liberalism, if we know each other, we can trust each other. So I won't feel threatened by different religions or different languages or different customs because I understand how and why people do them. And so it doesn't scare me. I don't feel threatened by it. And therefore we can avoid war. So as you can see, this is a very, very different outlook on how people view the world. And I wanted to take you to kind of their main philosophy as well. For them, it's all about international organizations like the United Nations. People are being viewed as peaceful and good. They will always be making rational, logical decisions, and they're always progressing to be better. And for them, it's respecting the law. And if everybody does that, right, there's no need to have conflict or to go to war. Okay, so you see why it would be referred to as more idealism. So this is the belief that, generally speaking, people are good and will do good things for each other, and when it really comes down to it, will sacrifice for each other. All right, the third ism we are going to talk about today is Marxism. The key term for Marxism here really is class, okay? It is the idea that poor and rich people are always at odds with each other. Marxists always look at the world as haves and have-nots. So you can see this within a country between classes. They call them the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, but think of it as rich and poor. The poor people work hard and have nothing, and the rich people benefit from those things, but they don't actually work all that much. They take advantage of poor people, is how a Marxist would see it. And in the world stage, they view this as countries. So for them, there are countries that have and countries that have not. This Marxist theory applied to countries is called world systems theories. So there's core countries like the United States and Canada and France, they have, and they're rich and they're wealthy. And then there's semi-peripheral countries that are growing fast, but you still see rich and poor pretty strongly within them. So your China, your Mexico, your Brazil, your Russia, your India. And then there's peripheral countries, the ones that are viewed by Marxists as abused by the rest of the world. Everybody takes their raw materials and they don't really make a profit. And those would be, sub-Saharan African nations, Southeast Asian countries like Cambodia, Laos, Tanzania, Mozambique, countries like that, okay? So I wanted to mention that because it is a perspective that still exists in the world. I don't know if you spied it on that slide, but countries like Cuba and North Korea, they view the world in this way, even though it may sound like a strange theory to have. In those countries, it's the dominant theory within that country, okay? The next theory is feminism, and feminism is all about women. Okay, you ask the same questions, but you ask questions like, how does this affect women differently from men? Do women have a different role than men? The question in the book is, how does war affect men and women differently? And it's true, men and women have very different experiences in war. Men usually are soldiers and have specific jobs. Mostly, percentage-wise, they're the leaders making the decisions. Women, on the other hand, are oftentimes, victims of war. Their family members die in war. They're targeted in war. They suffer very differently. They're the first to lose work anytime there's an economic depression. The point being is that feminism is viewed as a necessary perspective because you have to understand how a woman's experience is different from a man's. Okay, so it's asking, well, what about the women in this scenario? The book will go on to talk about some very important issues that are unique to women that men don't experience. And I'm going to kind of end my talk on feminism with the two different approaches. There are many different kinds of feminists, and just like I said previously with realism and liberalism, I think feminism is very politicized as well, and be careful not to do that with international relations. You should always be asking about different parts of society and how they experience events differently. It's just a different perspective. And of course, women should be one of those perspectives that you ask about. But for an approach to international relations, many people wonder, how can you use feminism to improve the world around you? Now, there's a group of feminists that believe that overcoming femininity is how you use feminism. If you want to see more female leaders in the world, they need to act like men. They need to be strong, not afraid of things like war, confrontation. They should be combative, competitive, aggressive. And I like to use Margaret Thatcher. She's nicknamed the Iron Lady. She was the old Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during the Cold War. She did not shy away from, tough talk and going to war. So a lot of feminists see that that's the approach you need to take, that women should be just as present as men in the world. And if we need those strong female leaders, then let's have them. But there's also another group of feminists that believe that women have something unique in them, that they're nurturing, they're quiet, they're peaceful, they're calm, they're maternal, and that should be the cure for a quote-unquote masculine society, and that they should offer those unique feminine skills. So I've chosen Aung San Suu Kyi of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, as my example. She's very calm, collected, peaceful. She never raises her voice. She's all about nonviolent resistance. She's in the parliament now for Myanmar. And she's spoken out against a very strong military junta in a very nonviolent, peaceful way. And some people argue that that's just the kind of feminine leadership that we need. And of course, there's a whole spectrum of people that believe things in between. So it's just another lens to look at that. All right, the last approach to international relations is constructivism. And my favorite quote for constructivism, my students last year made it quite a joke, is, "It is what you make of it." Constructivism is the idea that we construct the world around us. So realists see the world that way. Therefore, the world is that way. If you think all people are evil and you can't trust them, you will treat them like they're evil, and therefore you won't be able to trust them because of how you treat them. They see the same thing with liberalism. If you treat people like you can trust them and that they are good and that you can solve things nonviolently, then that's exactly how they will become, because that's how you treat them. So the idea is constructivism, the world is what we make of it. You're best friends with your best friend because you've both agreed to be best friends. You're enemies with your worst enemy because you've decided to be worst enemies. And the idea is that you can change that whenever you want to. When you decide to treat an enemy like a friend, they'll be your friend. When you start treating your friend like your enemy, they'll be your enemy. Okay? So the constructivism comparison I love to use, I don't know if you saw that 90s movie, The Matrix, but it's great. But it's basically about changing the computer program that we see, which changes your reality, right? And so for constructivists, the world is exactly how we view it. And we can choose to say, I see how I'm doing this, so I'm going to change that, so we can flip the script, so to speak. A great example, we were enemies in World War II with Germany and Japan, but now they're allies and #1 trade partners. That changed the moment we decided to make that change. And they can be our enemies again if we decide to make them our enemies, okay? So this is the more abstract ism, but it's very important as well. So that is your overview of the isms for perspectives in international relations. I hope that helped. Have a great day. Bye.